Welcome to the Scalable Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we discuss the most scalable strategies, tools, and approaches to successfully invest in real estate. Learn how to make the most impact of your time, automate your real estate investing business, find off-market deals with minimum time invested, and leverage your capital to create as many income streams as possible so that you can achieve true financial independence. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Mason Clement. Hi, Scalable Investors. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to tell you about a group that I'm a part of called HiveMind. If you're serious about taking the next step in your real estate investing career, then this is definitely a group that you need to join. Some of our members are making $90,000 or more per month and as much as $300,000 on just one deal. And at the same time, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars like you typically would joining other mastermind groups. This is only $99 per month. And when you join, you'll gain access to a robust integrated CRM software that allows you to track your leads, run automated triggers, and ultimately scale your marketing efforts. So the difference here is that you're not left high and dry, but gain access to a support network that allows you to use that tool and learn from other more experienced real estate investors. So to learn more, go to scalablerei.com/hivemind. That's HIVEMIND. Thanks a lot. Let's get into the episode. Hi, Scalable Investors. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Mason Clement, and today we have with us Tim Lyons, who is a active managing partner and founder of Cityside Capital multifamily investing, but he's also a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department. So really excited to be speaking about that. If y'all don't know, I lived in New York myself for 6 years, so already have some instant rapport there. And really grateful for your service. I mean, it's you're a modern day hero, you know, it takes a lot of courage to do what you do. So anyway, thanks again for being on the show, Tim. How are things going on this lovely Friday?
Yeah, Mason, thank you so much for that intro. And it's a pleasure to be here with your listeners. And believe me, people tell me all the time, thank you for my service. And it's really, the pleasure is all mine. It's a wonderful way to make a living. And I drive to work with a smile on my face every single time, so it's all good. But yeah, no, it's Friday morning. We were just talking. We have some irons in the fire. Things are looking up, and I'm just happy to be here.
All right, perfect. So what I'd like to ask everyone that's on the show is just get into their background and their journey. And you're actually the second real estate investor I know of that's been doing this dual of firefighter role and real estate investor role. So why don't you just tell us about all of that, what brought you to today?
Yeah. So like I said, I love being a New York City firefighter. I've been doing it 16 plus years. And, it was a wonderful way to make a living. The schedule was great. I worked 24 hours on, 3 days off, or some variation thereof. And a lot of guys and girls who are firefighters, we have second jobs, and people do the gamut of second career type jobs. A lot of people do contracting and HVAC and roofing and plumbing and stuff like that. But I was, when I grew up, I was allergic to a hammer, and my parents were allergic to the tools, and I just never got those skills. So I kind of stayed away from those types of jobs. I ended up going back to nursing school and got my RN degree and became a registered nurse in a emergency room. And, those were like two puzzle pieces fitting together. Those two jobs just complemented each other in a nice way. Not only the schedule, but just, the adrenaline, something different every single day. It was great. And I was working, a lot of hours. I'm a pretty motivated individual. And, being a firefighter and then being a nurse, I always had as much side work as I wanted. And I ended up starting to work too much, 70, 80, 90 hours a week, especially when my kids were super small and my wife was able to stay home for a few years. And everything was great, but, the kids couldn't talk, and obviously I missed them terribly. But, when they got a little older, I have 3 little girls, 10, 7, and 2 now. When the 2 older ones got to be able to talk more, they used to miss me a whole lot. And there used to be a lot of drama when I would come home and leave and, not be home for a few days maybe. And I started to feel terrible. And, my wife was feeling it. I was feeling it. The kids were feeling it. And I knew there had to be some sort of other path that I could go down to, still have that fulfillment in work, and but be also, to be well off financially. I've always been a financial buff. I've been reading the Wall Street Journal since college, and reading books and going to conferences and seminars, and you know real estate to me, Mason, was always one of those things that I was going to do someday, and it's kind of what other people did. And I knew I should be doing it. And I now know that there's a term for that. It's called the destination fallacy. Someday I'll do this and someday I'll do that. And I never knew how to get started. I never knew, what sort of opportunities were available to me. And being a New Yorker, I am skeptical of about everything and everybody until proven otherwise. So, with all that being said, I ended up reading Rich Dad Poor Dad in the summer of 19 on a family vacation. It immediately, I felt like the lights were put on. The shade was taken away from my face, and I was able to see clearly. And I just knew at that point that I had stumbled on something great, and I wanted to just keep on going. So, 2 months, 3 months later, after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was closing on a 3-family property that I am actually in the process of selling at the moment. But that was my foray into real estate.
Okay, so why 3 units? Why not like a single family on Long Island or something?
It's a couple of reasons. Growing up in Long Island, I didn't know anybody that owned real estate. I grew up in a middle class or so, upbringing, and I lived with my mom growing up, and no one I knew talked about real estate. No one owned real estate, and if you're from the greater New York City area, real estate prices and the values have always been really high. And I think that barrier to entry was something that was holding me back, not thinking outside the box that I could invest out of state, or I can invest across the country, or, in a syndication, or invest in notes. I mean, there's a billion ways to make money in real estate. But to me, I thought I had to do it in my own neighborhood, in kind of in my own backyard type of thing. And people don't buy real estate by and large, single family homes where I grew up, for cash flow. They might buy them for appreciation down the line, but certainly not for cash flow. And I think that was also something that was holding me back. With that being said, I'm also a pretty risk averse person. So the thought of buying my first rental property and it being a single family home or a condo, and then maybe not having a renter for any period of time due to turnover or some other event, it made me nervous that I'd have to be shouldering the entire expense for that month or several months. So the 3-unit really was a risk-adjusted way for me to get into real estate, to look around and do some due diligence and some underwriting, and know that, with 1 or 2 units paying their rent, I could pay all the expenses, the mortgage, everything. And that 3rd unit would be the profit every month. So that really kind of made me feel so much better that, even if I had 2 units vacant, we'd still have income from one of the units to help offset the expenses.
Okay, and that 3-unit was also in Long Island, though, you said?
No, so that was, I went to school in New England. So a friend of mine from college and we went half on that house. So we were partners on that house, and we kind of met in the middle, in Connecticut. So he was up from upper New England, and I'm from New York. So it wasn't too far for either of us. So, and we were able to find a 3-family that was affordable, that had the good structure attached to it, and that minimal work had to be done. But we could also cash flow with the prevailing rents in that market.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that most people don't buy for cash flow, at least like a large single family. The apartment I mentioned to you before we started recording over in Jackson Heights, it's definitely a negative cash flow. It's not much. It's like 200 negative every month, but we're just kind of holding on to it for that appreciation, like you mentioned. But it is painful because we do have a couple other rent houses that do a little bit of cash flow, but it's the difference because the cap rate's so low in these major cities. It's just it kind of turns the traditional model upside down. in terms of
Well, I
buying
mean,
and
that's the
holding?
great thing. That's the great thing about real estate, right? I mean, if there's people who will have no problem having a negative cash flow in a high, appreciation market like New York City, because in 5, 10, 20 years from now, you're going to look like the absolute hero of the day when you sell that thing or refinance and roll into another property. But that is why getting educated in real estate and investing is just huge. You have to know, are you going for appreciation? Are you going for a cash flow? What's the market doing? What's the population growth, the job growth? I mean, all those metrics and all the goals that you have personally, come into play when you want to be a real estate investor.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense. So how did you go from this 3 units to now about 721 units in about a year and a half? What was that progression looking like?
Yeah, I probably should have sent you an email with an update, because we're at like maybe 1,300 units and probably closer to 200 million of assets under management.
Okay.
It's been a wild year, I can say. So yeah, so I mean, I had enough capital to maybe do another similar type purchase, of like another 3-family or 4-family property. But after we owned it for a few months and we put a new roof on, new siding, we rehabbed one of the units. It was another job. And although I really like the landlord education that I've gotten over the last say 2 years, it's definitely not something that I'm passionate about. I'm not passionate about the landlording per se. I'm passionate about real estate investing, for sure. But it just wasn't moving the needle all that much. I mean, we were cash flowing several $100s per month, and we did better on our taxes. And we had that proof of concept that I think we really truly needed. Between my wife and I. But I kept on hearing about multifamily. I kept on hearing about the scalability of it, and it was something that I was interested in. But right in the beginning, I didn't know that I had the bandwidth to take on a multifamily project. I didn't think I understood it well enough, and being skeptical and being, a little bit cautious, I had to take my time with that. So I investigated it a little bit more, and I found out that it involved underwriting and cap rates and, net operating income and all these different metrics that are a touch different from, your regular 1 to 4 family residential properties. But I was intrigued, and I was hearing different podcasts with cops, firefighters, teachers, accountants, doctors. They're all doing, multifamily. And I'm like, well, if they can do it and they seem to be successful at it, then there's no reason why I can't be as well. So I started hearing about coaching programs and mentorships. And again, I had some, pretty big limiting beliefs about paying for coaching or paying for mentorship programs. But the more I dug into those different types of programs and I started talking to students and different programs, it resonated with me to the point where I really thought that I wanted to do it. And I just had to find the right fit. So that's kind of how I got into multifamily. I got in with the mentoring program with the intent of just collapsing the time frame needed to getting to a point where I was educated enough and I had enough confidence and enough clarity to start underwriting deals, to start making offers, and if I got one, to start operating. So that was, the mentorship coupled with the 3-family experience really kind of pushed me into the multifamily space.
Okay. I know that a lot of people talk about how it's kind of a competitive space though, and some people, it might take them a year or more to find their first deal. So did you have any struggle like that, or was it pretty fluid, seamless process? What was your experience?
Yeah, so I actually ended up joining that program March 1st of 2020. And as you know, COVID was something that was, being talked about, but it wasn't necessarily on our, well, I guess it was on our shores. We just didn't really know about it. Within 2 weeks, my kids were home from school, being homeschooled. The economy was shutting down. It was chaos. Everyone was scared. We didn't know about this thing called COVID. It was a really uncertain time, which was looking back, it was a crazy time for me to say, I want to get started in multifamily real estate, and make that investment into the coaching program. But, working as a New York City firefighter, I work in a very, very populated, a densely populated neighborhood called Corona, Queens. And they got demolished by COVID. And I was showing up to work and we're doing 24 hours of basically CPR on people and nobody was making it. And, very quickly, my wife and I decided that I probably shouldn't be coming home after spending 24 hours doing CPR on COVID patients. So I moved out of my house and I moved into my mother-in-law's house for 8 weeks. And I, didn't see my family for 8 weeks. And I dialed into the education and I just started calling brokers and I started calling, community banks and other lenders and really assembling the team and assembling, some contacts and networking. Because, me personally, I needed something to keep my mind occupied. But also, there weren't that many people that were probably calling bankers and, commercial brokers saying, hey, I'm looking for, a property in the middle of COVID. The economy shut down, but I'm still looking. So I really kind of got some traction that way. And, my goal when I first started multifamily was to do a small multifamily, like a 6, 10, 20 unit property with my brothers and my dad and maybe another friend or so. But, when you get into one of these programs, I was assigned a coach and the coach and I just hit it off. We're both New Yorkers. And, after a couple of months, he had given me the opportunity of a lifetime to join him on one of his syndications that he was doing at the time, which was a 43 unit in Pennsylvania. And, because I would always ask him, hey, how can I add value to you? What can I do to help? And, can I go mow the lawn on one of your properties? Like, I just wanted to kind of, understand that syndication model because going into multifamily, I wasn't really familiar with syndication. But then after having that opportunity and joining him on that 43 unit, and then actually having some opportunity to raise some capital, I was absolutely hooked on the syndication model. So I got started with the 43 unit, and like a lot of other investors talk about, the law of the first deal kicked in. And, now I had that track record of being in the general partnership on the deal. And very quickly, in about a year and maybe 15 months, we've scaled to where we are today.
Okay. So did you actually raise capital for that 43 unit one, or what part of the GP were you involved there?
Yeah. So, so really the whole thing, from start to finish, the due diligence period, understanding the financing and kind of really just learning alongside my coach. And then, right towards the end, when we were going to go live with the deal, he had asked me, do you think you can raise any money? And I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, I've never tried to, so he's like, well, why don't you give it a shot? And, he really kind of just pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot, and that's what I did. I talked to some family and friends and I was able to raise 150,000 on that first deal. And, coming from a guy who didn't think I could raise anything, that was a lot of money, and, I think it all kind of came together for me saying, you know what, there's a real appetite for these types of deals. People want to be exposed to real estate in their portfolios, but they don't necessarily want to be the landlord and understand all the X's and O's of being a landlord. So once I realized that there was a whole other part of the economy that was devoted to private placements and syndications, that's really where I focused my time from that point, going forward.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And then, so what's the name of the program? I know there's a few of them around there throughout the country.
Yes. So the one that I joined was Jake and Gino. It's two guys from New York, Gino Barbaro and Jake Stanziano. And it was the absolute best move that I could have ever made. Coming from a guy with, all sorts of limiting beliefs and skepticism, absolutely the best decision that I made.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know here in Dallas, Brad Sumrock's program is really big as well. But Jake and Gino, I've definitely heard of them as well, so that's great. So I know some groups, there's actually another one, Lifestyles Unlimited, and for the GPs, you can only raise capital within that group. And that's just how you find more of your passive investors for next deals. So is that how the Jake and Gina one works? Or are you now raising capital outside the group?
Yeah, and I know that like a lot of the other education groups and mentorship programs try to keep things in house. Jake and Gino's not like that at all. So yeah, I mean, we could really, I mean, like people will only invest money with you if they know you, like you, and trust you. I had to go outside the group to my own ecosystem, right, to find people that might be interested in something like this. But again, like back then I didn't know really how to approach people about a real estate investment opportunity, to let them know what I was working on. I was always kind of an introvert, I guess, when it came to money and investing. It's one of those like taboo topics sometimes. Now I can't stop talking about it. I love talking about taxes, making money, real estate, anything. But yeah, I mean, so that's how I got to start, was going to my own ecosystem, and Jake and Gino really support you to do just that.
Okay. Was there kind of a surprise, like in people's reciprocity as you approached them and told them about the opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it just a lot on another podcast. It's really the identity shift that had to occur in order for me to be successful in raising capital. For the longest time, I was, Tim the firefighter and Tim the ER nurse, and now I'm Tim the real estate investor who's providing opportunities for everyday people to kind of join the ride on the real estate investment train, right? So it took a little while for my own ecosystem to kind of process that, but very quickly they saw what I was doing. I got a little bit more active on social media. Tons of networking calls, right through COVID, with Zoom and Google Meet and all that stuff. So I was able to have a lot of contacts and a lot of conversations with people right through COVID. And I think social media helped, right? People, I think, turned to social media during COVID, and I was able to put out some videos, and I was on a whole bunch of podcasts. So very quickly people caught on to what I was doing, and that opened the door to, hey Tim, I want to learn more. Let's hop on a call. And then that's really the organic way that we've been able to raise so much capital.
Okay, got it. And so now, do you have like a minimum number of units for each deal you're looking at? What's your threshold?
No, so we took a little bit of a left turn, I would say, at the end of 2020, when we had raised some capital, and we were, in the general partnerships of a couple of different deals, doing due diligence and really kind of doing the whole thing. It was getting to the point where Greg and I, Greg's my brother, and also my business partner at Cityside Capital, we both work W-2 jobs. We both have little kids, and we're saying to ourselves, asset managing, a couple of properties, and then trying to raise capital and to work our W-2 jobs and to raise and to, be good family guys. It was getting to be a lot, and we kind of had to make a decision, where are we going to go with our business? And we really love the capital raising space and those conversations that kind of come out of that. But you can't just raise capital for a syndication and then kind of move on. And you have to have a direct participation in the asset management of that property and of that project. But there is a way that you can do that, and that's with you become a registered representative of a broker dealer, it's called. And there's a few exams that are part of that process. But basically, we got introduced to a multifamily centric broker dealer out of New York City, and his partners in Texas, in Austin. And they have 8 or 9 sponsors on this platform, where we provide the middle market capital for those sponsors. Because at the end of the day, sponsors can raise several $1 million by themselves. But say they have a lot of deal flow and they tap out their investors, they might need more capital, but they don't necessarily want to jump up to the next rung, which might be a family office or private equity, pref equity, because sometimes you can lose some autonomy in the deal, some voting, share in the LLC, and A lot of times they don't want to come in as LPs; they want to come in as a joint venture. So this platform basically uh, did their due diligence on 8 or 9 at the time multifamily and self-storage sponsors. And when I say due diligence, the broker dealer, in order to work with somebody, has to know. It's called know your customer. They have to know, the operator is legit, that they pay the investors like they say they're going to pay the investors. So he spent several months traveling around the U.S. to different operators' properties and walking them and talking to their property management team and going through their books and doing background checks and fingerprinting, all so we could work together in a compliant and legal manner. And then on the other side of that platform are people like me and Greg. We can raise capital from our inner circle and beyond. But we had to get licensed, so we had to take a couple of exams and then be licensed in states to basically sell investments. Like when you're raising capital for a syndication, you're essentially selling a security. That's why it's always best to have that license. So that's kind of what we did, and we kind of spent a lot of time and money into our business, and wrapping around that broker dealer model. So now we kind of have this pipeline of nonstop deal flow from these experienced operators, which I'm not sure if I even if I'm allowed to say the names on this podcast, but if we said their names, probably you and a lot of the listeners would probably know them. So we're able to raise capital for them, and obviously since we have this registered rep status, there's a commission involved, which is basically like an acquisition fee. If people are listening, and they're familiar with the acquisition fee. But then we get equity in the deal on the back end. So it's a win-win for Greg and I, because we can work directly with experienced operators with nonstop high quality deal flow, and then we can turn around and put those deals out to our investors, and it's like a doubly underwritten, pretty well vetted deal at that point. So it's a win-win for everybody involved.
Okay, so the sponsor sends a deal, and then I guess you're also kind of vetting their underwriting and underwriting as if it was your own deal.
Yeah, so we have an underwriting team in New York City that used to work for a hedge fund underwriting their deals in real estate. So when the operators kind of send us along an opportunity, we do a second round of due diligence and underwriting, and so long as it checks all the boxes that we're looking for, as far as IRR and cash on cash returns and hold periods and specific markets, then we'll turn around and then put it out to our investors.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. What's it like working with your brother? Because I know a lot of people say like separate family from business and all that.
Yes, but especially since I'm the younger brother. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. So but it's awesome. It's been the ride of a lifetime to be able to work in a business like this with my brother Greg. I'm close with Greg and his family, and our families are tight, and it's just being from talking to him a couple of times a month to talking to him a couple of times a day every day has just been awesome. So it's been a journey. We're on it together, and it's been beyond our wildest imagination. If we look back even a year and say, wow, I can't believe what we've kind of accomplished. So we're both competitive guys. We always played sports growing up, so I think there's a competitive edge to the both of us. And and listen, I know that when I'm working early mornings or late nights, I'm supporting my family, but I'm also supporting his. And I think he feels the same way. So there's a nice synergy there, and it's just nice to be on the same ride together.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess it just depends on each person and their work ethic and all that stuff. Because I know sometimes it could be a situation where it's like, if you weren't my family, I would fire you. And I've heard it from other investors, not obviously you, but that's why I asked about it. Just curious. I work with my brother on some stuff. It's just minor roles, like signing as trustee for some trust on deals I do, stuff like that. What were you going to say something?
Well, I mean, like, listen, like he knows my work ethic. I've never been able to sit still. I've always been super motivated. I'm always on to the next thing, trying to learn, educate myself. And, I certainly know his work ethic, and, I think knowing that beforehand, because when, and this goes into picking a partner, right? Maybe you're not able to work with your sibling and know them intimately like that, but maybe you meet people at a meetup or a conference or a seminar, and how do you build your team? And it's really because you got to have your values have to be aligned, your goals have to be aligned, your 1, 3, 5 year time frames, all that stuff, because it is it's like a marriage almost. And having all that, having that knowledge of Greg, going into this was huge. And there was a certain sense of clarity and confidence, going into the business with him.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, actually, I took Series 7 and Series 63 exams because I previously worked on a Forex desk and they required everyone to have those licenses. So which series did you have to take for your broker-dealer registered rep?
Yeah, so you got to start off with the SIE, which is the Securities Industry Essentials exam. And then once you decide to work with a broker dealer, they have to sponsor you for those series exams. So the first one was the Series 82. It's basically all about private placements and direct participation programs. And then the Series 63, which is the like the blue sky laws.
Okay, cool. And how did you get involved with that broker dealer in New York? I mean, is it just through networking, or how did you all end up coming along there to meet that person?
It was networking. People, that I've just developed relationships with over, the last 2 years or so. You have a conversation about something and someone says, oh, I got to, introduce you to so-and-so. And then from there, we just had multiple phone calls and Zoom calls. And, obviously this is during COVID, right? So we couldn't travel and see each other, but one was in Texas and the other one was, right in my backyard. So it was easy, it was more of like an interview process, getting to know that, we'd be a good fit with each other. And, once that was out of the way, we had to make that commitment to, getting onboarded, right? There's fees involved and there's a lot of studying involved and, to make sure that we were, doing the right thing.
Okay. And after you raise the capital, are you continuing to update the investors that you brought into the deal and still staying in touch with that deal?
Yeah, so we decided to kind of provide that value add to our investors by investing in a portal that we can do our own reporting on. We basically wanted to create a user experience for our investors that they can come to one portal as a one-stop shop. Even though we work with multiple different sponsors in different markets, to prevent people from, remembering 9 different logins and username and passwords, they can come to one portal and see all of their holdings in one spot. Now we still work very closely with the operating team to, to have the same reporting, and the same, standards and all that. So that's really the value that Cityside Capital brings, is that user experience to one-stop shop.
Okay, I actually didn't think about that before though, but how does the bookkeeping and the different systems differ across the different sponsors? I guess you kind of hit on it. It seems like you have to have them conform to some type of, I guess, template to fit into your stuff to report to your investors.
Yeah, it's once you figure it out, it's easy. And a lot of these portals are they're very in tune with how our operations work already. A lot of them are sponsors themselves. So when they build out the platforms, it's very easy to integrate, 2 different portals. So say if one of our, operators uses, one portal and we use a different one, there's ways to integrate them and to share data that makes it seamless.
Okay, cool. And then I guess it's like some monthly fee or annual fee you pay for these portals. and they maintain everything for you?
I mean, they're all different. I guess they're all the same, but the fees are different. It just depends on what you're looking for and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, ours was a onboarding fee, but then we were doing it per deal, but then we did so many deals this year that we just decided to do like the unlimited package. This way we have we don't have to worry about making that extra payment or anything because we did a deal or two, per month or whatever.
Okay, so it sounds like this approach is a little bit more scalable because you're not spending a lot of time finding the deal and all of that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's like that win-win I was talking about because the operators, I mean, they're eating, breathing, and sleeping acquisition and due diligence, and a lot of them can raise money by themselves, but maybe they don't love to do that side of the business. They don't love the investor relations side, maybe, and I'm not saying that they don't. I'm saying that sometimes the other operators are more excited about the acquisition piece and the asset management piece. Whereas Greg and I love that investor relations side and educating and, really kind of diving into the investment side of it. So it's scalable in that, we don't have to worry about the other stuff. We work very closely with the teams on the asset management side. And, we have developed these relationships with these operators and we know their track record and their experience speak for themselves. So, it's just it's a great way to scale up in multifamily. And we haven't done a self-storage deal yet, but we're close. Without, listen, at the end of the day, commercial real estate, specifically multifamily and self-storage, it's a team sport, and we found our spot on the bench as the capital side. And there's other players that are stepping up to the plate, with the acquisition, due diligence, asset management piece.
Okay, that makes sense. And I know I've hit on it on prior episodes with other guests, but another value add that I see is y'all vetting that sponsor, because someone might be able to stumble upon some multifamily deal, but they may have never underwritten a deal. They have no idea how to vet it or vet that sponsor and really understand if it's a good deal or is it really safe to put $50,000 or $100,000 into. So that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, that's the biggest piece. Yeah, the hardest part of the investor's day is to get comfortable with the sponsor and get comfortable with the deal. And we're kind of taking that off of the investors' plates by kind of doing that beforehand and saying, we've done that due diligence. We're hanging our license on these sponsors. You know what I'm saying? We're vouching for them because we've done the homework and have formed those relationships. So, that, because as as a LP, you want to be presented with a deal. Feel good about that operator. You want to feel good about their track record and their experience. So having that taken care of for the investor is huge.
Okay. But you also mentioned earlier, sometimes the operator doesn't want to go up a higher rung to like family office or PE funds. And I know that they can have often a lot more stringent due diligence on the operator and require a certain amount of time frame. Could you go into that a little bit more? Are you familiar with what type of requirements they have?
Yeah, so a lot of them have different mandates on, like you said, and requirements. So, like we did a deal. Our third deal was with a private equity company. Preferred equity company, and there was a 24-month lockout. There's a certain IRR hurdle that we had that we have to hit, a certain cash on cash hurdle that we have to hit before we'd be able to refinance them or buy them out of the deal. They came in as a JV, not an LP. So there's voting shares and rights and all sorts of legal minutia that's involved with people that can bring a substantial check to the table, but there's strings attached. And it's a great way to go, especially if you have good relationships with these different groups and they're easy to work with. But it's definitely a different way of financing and raising that equity for your deal.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it seems like that would be, I guess, further down the road. in terms of someone's syndicating journey. And like you said, you could possibly lose some autonomy there, and does sound a bit more involved. But what portion of equity would they usually take on? I guess it depends on each deal, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, some people, some groups that I've had conversations with, they want to be the majority, right? So they'll be like, yeah, you guys can go raise 10% of the equity, the capital stack, but we want to bring 90 or 80% of it. Or other groups, they don't want to have too much exposure, right? So a family office might be more conservative than that, so they don't want to have more than, say, 25% of the equity in the deal, because they don't want to be overexposed. So it's all basically depending on the entity that wants to get involved and the asset, and each deal is a little bit different. So and then obviously, as you know, everything's negotiable. So
Yeah, okay. Wrapping up here, I think we hit most of the questions, but I do like to go into some more of the soft skills. I'm actually working through some Tony Robbins' Time of Your Life program, and really understanding how to maximize every day. So what's your daily routines? How do you maximize your impact and your mindset? Because not every day is easy, obviously, and you have to have consistency every day,
yeah, this is something that I thought was a little bit of foo-foo in the beginning when I was listening to podcasts about real estate. There seemed to be a lot of personal development wrapped up into real estate podcasts, and I was like, "What are these guys talking about?" And obviously, I'm now one of those guys, because I used to be a late sleeper, and for the last I'll say 2 years maybe, I'm up at 4:35 in the morning. I want to get a couple of hours work in before the kids wake up, but I've also incorporated on and off some meditation. I don't know that I'm doing it correctly, I guess. So I go through these little fits and starts of meditation, but also journaling, writing down my goals has been huge. And yeah, just writing down the goals has been huge for me, because a lot of it is always, a lot of the things that we think about as, parents or investors, it's swirling around in our head constantly. And, just the power of putting your thoughts and writing them down on paper and being able to refer to them has been huge for me. And it's amazing what, the goals I've been able to accomplish by doing so. So I would say meditation, writing down my goals, and then reading. I was never a huge reader. I never thought I had time. I was always too tired. If I read at night, obviously I'd wake up, in the middle of the night with a book on my face, so getting 20 pages in per day has been huge, if you can get 20, 10, even 10 pages, I started off with 10 and now I'm doing 20. And I'm just cruising through books, and I have time for it. And I'm that much better and for doing so.
Okay. Are they nonfiction educational books, or just fiction, or kind?
Yeah, no, nonfiction, usually something to do with either personal development or taxes or real estate or, investing, marketing, all sorts of stuff having to do with, what we're doing in the business.
Okay. As a capital raiser, what's the optimal tax structure? Have you figured that out yet?
Luckily, I mean, I love learning about taxes now, and it's like a little hobby of mine. But we were able to, find some CPAs that were just huge in helping us structure, the LLC and some of our agreements, and so we're in the beginning stages of that. But it's certainly something that, as an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you really have to align yourself with the team of CPAs and bookkeepers that understand your business from the ground up. And, for real estate, especially if you're doing real estate, whether you're passive or active, you really need to learn. I'm sorry, let me back up. You need to have somebody on your team that understands that whole issue. Like I always say, there's a lot of doctors out there, but you wouldn't go to a neurosurgeon if you broke your ankle. Same medical degree, two different types of training and comfort levels and understanding of the human body. So same thing with CPAs. There's a lot of great general CPAs out there, But if they are not comfortable with the passive income, rules and regulations, if they're not comfortable with depreciation and losses and different entity structures, then you really need to find somebody who is, because you could be leaving a lot of money on the table, and it's really because they're just uncomfortable with that process.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm in the process right now of vetting different tax strategists, and not just CPAs, because CPA could just be someone who fills out the form and doesn't really tell you how to do it right. So
yeah.
Okay, very good. I think this has all been pretty helpful. What is the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Cityside Capital and what you're doing?
Yeah, just hop onto our website, citysidecap.com. And my email is tim@citysidecap.com. You can also find me on Facebook and LinkedIn.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I'll put those links in the show notes as well so people can see them. But again, thanks for your time. It's been helpful, and hopefully do it again.
Awesome, Mason. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right, that's another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to leave a review and subscribe on whatever channel you're using to listen or watch these episodes. And also be sure to go to scalablerealestateinvesting.com, scroll to the bottom, and fill out the form to sign up for our email. And you could also reach me directly at mason@scalablerealestateinvesting.com. That's MASON @scalablerealestateinvesting.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me to either partner on deals or even be considered to do your own episode on this podcast. Thanks again, and have a great day.